So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions, and Statutory Authorities, including the Tobago House of Assembly of this 13th Republican Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. This committee has had now its second public hearing. This is its second public hearing with the stakeholders pursuant to our inquiry into the operational efficiency of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. Our first public hearing was held on January 28, 2026, with officials from the Port Authority and its line ministry, being the Ministry of Works and Infrastructure. Members of the listening and viewing audience are invited to post or send comments via the Parliament's various social media platforms, Facebook page, ParlView, and the Parliament's YouTube channel and X, formerly known as Twitter. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at TTPARLCOMMITTEES at TTPARL Committees for real-time updates and highlights for committee meetings. At this stage, I would like to invite the members of the various stakeholders we have here to introduce the representatives. We have with us today the Customs and Excise Division of the Ministry of Finance, the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Customs Clerks and Customs Brokers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, and the Estate Police Association of Trinidad and Tobago. So at this stage, I would firstly like to invite the Custom and Excise Division to introduce their representatives.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Riyad Juman, Comptroller of Customs and Excise. Oh, and I have with me Ms. Nadine Leach-Carter, Chief Preventive Inspector.
Okay, thank you. And we can proceed with the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce.
Good afternoon, Chair. Sonji Pierre-Chase, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce. And with me is our Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Vashti Gaideen.
Thank you. And now the Customs Clerks and Customs Brokers Association.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Joel Osborne, Second Vice President of the Customs Clerks and Customs Brokers Association. Along with me is my Public Relations Officer, Christopher Alexander.
Thank you. And the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association.
Good afternoon. My name is Dale Parson, President of TTMA. And with me is Brittany Wright, Team Lead of Business Development at TTMA in the Secretariat. And I'm glad for this opportunity to be here to see how we can contribute towards this discussion.
Thank you. And we now have the Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good afternoon, Chair. Troy Prasad, President, Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And on my right, it's Kevin Chukwan, Vice President of Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
The Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union.
Excuse me. Good day, Chair, and your team. My name is Michael Anizet. I'm the President General of Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union. And with me is Kevin Allen, who is also a Deputy President of the Union. We look forward to a fruitful engagement given, what we are discussing today, which is absolutely necessary at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have the Estate Police Association of Trinidad and Tobago.
Good day to the Chair and everyone present. I am Derek Richardson, President of the Estate Police Association of Trinidad and Tobago. And with me, I have my second Vice President, Ms. Kizzy Lewis of the Port Authority, and we are thankful for the opportunity to be here to discuss the operations at the Port Authority.
Okay, thank you. I am Candace Jones-Simmons, Independent Senator and Chair of this committee, and I would also now like to invite the members of this committee to introduce themselves, starting with the Vice Chairman.
I am Michelle Benjamin, Member of Parliament and Vice Chair of the committee.
I am David Joseph Thomas, Member of Parliament for Tobago East, a member of this committee.
Good day, I'm Dr. Nathalie Chaitan Maharaj, Government Senator.
Good afternoon to you, Chair, members of the committee, and those of you joining us from the different entities. Vandana Mohit, member of the committee.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Madam Chair, Faris Alrawi, member.
Good afternoon, Chair, colleagues, members of the various institutions. I am Prakash Prasad, Government Senator.
Thank you. This committee is ably supported by the Secretary to the committee, Mr. Julian Ogilvie, and he's assisted by Ms. Peterkin and the Parliamentary Research Specialist. Now, before we begin, I wish to take us through an overview of the objectives of this inquiry. The Port of Spain is a critical national asset and one of the country's principal economic gateways. As a primary hub of maritime trade, its operations directly shape regional and international commerce, influence the ease of doing business, and underpin government revenue collections through customs and related activities. The port's performance also impacts supply chains, commodity prices, private sector competitiveness, and ultimately the cost of living and overall standard of living of the population. In this way, the effective management and modernization of the port are central to sustained economic growth and national development. As such, the objectives of the committee's inquiry are: 1, to examine the strategic direction and modernization efforts of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago; 2, to examine the operational performance of the port over the last 5 years and the performance indicators used to measure its performance; 3, to examine the crisis management strategies and protocols of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago; and to evaluate the adequacy of the legislative framework governing the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago's operations. At this stage, I wish to invite the representatives to give brief opening remarks, and having regard to the fact that there are 7 entities, I'm kindly requesting that these opening remarks be limited to a maximum of 1 minute. Thank you. We can start with you, Mr. Riyad Juman.
Good afternoon once again, Chair and the panel, committee. The Customs and Excise Division is a division of the Ministry of Finance and is responsible for administering and enforcing Trinidad and Tobago's customs laws under the Customs Act, Chapter 7801. Its core functions include regulating imports and exports, collecting and safeguarding customs revenue, monitoring customs controlled areas, examining and clearing cargo, preventing smuggling and customs fraud, enforcing trade restrictions, and supporting national security through effective border management and interagency cooperation. As part of its modernization agenda, the division is undertaking upgrades to its ASICUDA, which is Automated System for Customs Data, platform to enhance trade facilitation, risk management, electronic processing, and data-driven enforcement. These improvements are intended to streamline cargo clearance, strengthen compliance monitoring, improve transparency, and align Trinidad and Tobago's customs operations with international best practices in digital border management.
Thank you, Mr. Juman. We will now proceed to Ms. Sanji Pierre-Chase.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce is a key stakeholder of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and, by extension, the Port of Spain. The Trinidad and Tobago Chamber has approximately 700 members operating in all diverse sectors that interact with the Port of Spain, well, all ports, and in particular the Port of Spain. The feedback that we have from our members is that the performance of the Port of Spain has been widely described as below satisfactory. It is inconsistent with international best practices. Its delivery of services below the standard of regional counterparts. We are of the view that modernization is a key factor in taking the operations at the port at an international level, allowing businesses to be competitive, drive the ease of doing business process effectively, and deliver optimum performances to its key stakeholders. The Chamber remains very astute and a willing partner to all stakeholders in driving this modernization agenda, and express our support for this initiative this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre-Chase. Mr. Dale Parson.
Good afternoon. So TTMA is very grateful for this opportunity to be here today to appear before this committee towards improving the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago's operational efficiency. Manufacturing in Trinidad is probably the largest port user, I would say. We have over 800 members and heavy reliance on import of raw materials and export. Our sector is on a drive towards increasing our exports annually from $6 billion TT dollars per year towards 10.7 billion TT dollars per year by 2030. And a big part of our effectiveness it depends a lot on the port, because we have a lot of raw materials coming in, a lot of customers, export customers depending on us. And when we have hiccups at the port and at customs, it causes an impedance of our growth. And Forex is on the lips of everybody now. So this is really, really an important meeting for us to see how, as TTMA, we can contribute towards this committee, towards improving the overall port efficiency. We are not here to complain. We are here to see how we can contribute and work together with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parson. Mr. Derek Richardson.
Thank you. I represent the Estate Police Association. We are the body of officers that are charged with the responsibility for protecting the estate of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. The operations at the ParlView view as to be extremely important, being that it is part of the critical infrastructure of Trinidad and Tobago. Our assessment of the security infrastructure that it is woefully inadequate for what it is we are charged with protecting. There are a lot of improvements, both manpower-wise, technology, and the general processes that are required for a state enterprise such as the Port Authority, a statutory body, to be at the top of our game to protect the interests of Trinidad and Tobago. There are a lot of work that needs to be done, and that there must be an appreciation for the protection of the users of the port and the materials that pass through the port. So we think that, in essence, that there are a lot of work that needs to be done so that we can contribute to the whole of the viability and the productivity of the port. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Joel Osborne. Noted, thank you. Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. The Customs Clerk and Brokers Association, governed by the Customs Clerk and Brokers Act, Chapter 7803, we play an integral part in the border control and protection, and also revenue collection, with a timely delivery of cargo to your table. The association welcomes the opportunity to contribute to this critical review of the port's performance. Our submission is based on direct daily experience of our members who operate the coalface of trade facilitation. To summarize our response, we have seen welcome improvements in specific areas, such as the introduction of the NAVIS system and a little better communication during crises. However, these are isolated solutions and not systemic fixes. The reality of our members is that the delays caused by the portside inefficiencies, compounded by coordination gaps with customs and other agencies, lead directly to cash flow strains for businesses and higher prices for the public. Our core message in the port inefficiencies, whether from equipment downtime, labor constraints, or procedural silos, do not stay at the gate. They translate directly into increased demurrage, working capital strain, and high costs for customers. For Trinidad and Tobago to remain competitive, we need to shift from the periodic dialogue to a structured, time-bound modernization strategy with clear performance benchmark. Our recommendation focus on deepening digital integration, improving stakeholder coordination, and updating the legislative framework to match modern operations. If the Port of Port of Spain is to maintain its position as a viable logistics hub, we must move beyond ad hoc improvements. We need a public available time-bound plan with measurable targets, and our recommendation aim to bridge the gap between the port's operation and the businesses that rely on it, ensuring that efficiency gains on paper become real-world cost savings. We are here to elaborate on these points and discuss how we can work together to safeguard our national competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Troy Passad.
Good afternoon, Chair. The Shipping Association of Trinidad and Tobago, on behalf of its Executive Council, thanks the Joint Select Committee for the invitation to attend and participate in this stakeholder session. The Shipping Association is a business association which has been a constant and consistent supporter of development in the shipping industry over the years. We have provided support to our membership, government, and other supply chain stakeholders through the provision of advocacy services, technical advice, research, etc. Our membership comprises of ship agents, ship owners, ports, marine service providers, marine pilots, among others. So our membership spans the entire supply chain, which utilize the ports and impacted by the ports of Trinidad and Tobago. Therefore, we hope that we can provide responses and that can add value and help achieve the objectives of this committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Passad. And Mr. Michael Anisette.
Yeah. To you, Madam Chair, and your committee and other members present here. I want to make some fundamental points that in no industry, and more so the port, can we grow unless we recognize the importance of labor as a major stakeholder in any development. And therefore, we at Seamen and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, which was founded in 1937, we are proud to represent the dock workers, not only at Port of Spain, but at Point Lisas. And we view the union and the worker as an integral part of the development of this country and the Port of Port of Spain. We have been navigating the evolution from the days of steamers, steamship, as we call them, as dock workers are going to know, warehouse association, to the modern port authority, always with the primary goal of protecting our members and by extension ensuring the efficiency of this critical national assets. And while I make that point, I want to put this point on record because we seem to miss it. You cannot compare apples with sour grapes. And I'm saying that in the context that if the port workers are given the tools and the environment to perform, I will guarantee you we can perform because we have demonstrated from time to time in circumstances that we can produce as much as 37 moves per hour. And I'm therefore in the absence of the kind of enabling environment and the kind of equipment and the kind of changes that is necessary. The issue of productivity and inefficiency and comparison to other ports is misplaced in our humble view. And I'm saying that if we have to compare, let us compare apples with apples. And I'm certain, given where we are at the port, our performance is most welcome. And I want to publicly thank the port workers who have been working assiduously to ensure that the port still keep rolling, notwithstanding the outdated equipment, notwithstanding the fact that the question of procurement of parts, notwithstanding the fact that workers have to work overtime to get things going, we still perform. And I'm saying this to say that our primary goal will continue to fight for the protection of our members and by extension ensuring the efficiency of this critical national asset. Our response below are offered in the spirit of constructive engagement. And let me make that point. Constructive engagement, and in the hope of fostering a truly productive and respectful relationship with the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and other stakeholders, because we believe that is critical and important. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anisette. Okay, so at this stage, I wish to remind committee members and officials that all responses and questions are to be directed through the chair. When you are acknowledged by the chair, please activate your microphone, and when you've concluded your response, deactivate it. And with that, we wish to begin our inquiry, and we are starting with the Customs and Excise Division. But I wish to say that a lot of the questions that we have follow along similar themes. So some of these questions may be repeated for different entities, so bear that in mind. And at this stage, I wish to invite Member Professor Prasad to lead us off, as he has some questions for the Customs and Excise Division. Over to you, Mr. Prasad.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question, I want to frame the question this way, that we have not only Customs and Excise Division here, but a variety of other entities that work together as a whole. So therefore, I want to take a systems view. So the first question I want to ask is that in the upgrade of your software, etc., has consultation been done with all these sort of stakeholders?
Truly, Chair. Thank you, Member, for that question. The short answer is yes. We have engaged the major stakeholders in the first instance. The upgrade is only, 4-5 months into the upgrade out of the intended 18-month period that was envisioned for it. We have held meetings with the major stakeholders vis-a-vis the Chambers of Commerce. It was extended to Chamber of Commerce, Shipping Association, some of the attendees here, because these were the persons, the entities that it was felt would be critical to going to or achieving the phased achievements. Yeah. And so the Chambers of Commerce, the Shipping Association in particular, because of some of the foundation elements that need to be put in place for building going forward. And so yes, the short answer is yes, they will engage. It's the first of many engagements that take place, where they were basically shown what, give them an idea, the door, a peep at what the capabilities of this upgrade allows, and where they would factor in how they would benefit their relevant, the roles they would play, and how it stands to benefit.
Sure. And through you, Chair, so you have identified that you have reached out. Now, this upgrade, right now you have a system in place, I presume, Why is it taken 18 months to upgrade? I mean, normal software, I'm not accustomed to this kind of software, other software in different entities. But 18 months is quite a long time for an upgrade. That's my view. I mean, if you can probably elaborate why it is taking this long.
I really wouldn't be able to reply to that because that was the time frame given by the software developers, UNCTAD, from the beginning to achieve what we wanted, what we had indicated. And all of those modules, inclusive of the risk management element of it, ultimately the goal was, or is, sorry, to ensure increased throughput, minimum delays for delivery of cargo, while covering all the bases, so to speak, for the border security element of and revenue collection. So based on that, all the modules that the system can be implemented with the system to achieve it, UNCTAD gave that figure of 18 months to completion. However, it's going to be, as I said before, it is on a phased approach. So some going to be implemented within the next couple months, and as we go along, they build on it. That was their
Madam Chair, just by way of assistance, Controller of Customs, thank you so much. I know your job is not an easy one, and I salute you and the department for all the work that you have been doing. Perhaps, insofar as this is a public inquiry, it may be useful to just explain to the public what ASECUDA and ASECUDA Hub is as we move from ASECUDA Plus, what is intended to be achieved with the implementation of the new ASECUDA system. I, for instance, know that the time frame is because they have to bespoke design the modules to receive data, and that is done by way of an on-site mapping. But perhaps for the public's benefit, which will assist other stakeholders, maybe you could tell us what the output is intended to be with the implemented system. In other words, then, it is to achieve X, Y, and Z, which will produce faster A, B, and C.
Okay. So, ASI Hub is a technical data integration bridge that connects our stakeholders to the Customs Management or Customs Border Control System, CBCS, ASECUDA. The ASI Hub is an extension of the existing ASECUDA system that we have. It acts on an open, standardized data integration exchange platform. Minister Prakash Prasad will understand that better than me. Its main goal is to connect external ICT system, including the proposed port community system for the Port Authority, postal services, as well as the courier, express couriers at Piaco, and allow for real-time data processing and pre-arrival and departure assessment. Ultimately, it works. It benefits the risk management element that we're trying to get more reliant on by providing also a measure of targeting that kind of narrows down the anomalies that we would find, or that available that would otherwise take a pretty long time. With that, as well as making connectivity between our stakeholders and bridging the gap that exists presently between the various departments that have to perform a function in effecting an import or export transaction, bridging that gap digitally.
Could you, so it's clearer now. You have the various modules for the various applications. And yes. I presume, from what you have said, you would have given the designers the sort of the criteria you need, design criteria for the various modules, right? That's fine. it makes more sense now, so why that period is that long. The other issue that I want to ask you is that in terms of digitalization of your systems in the custom and excise, and maybe, I don't know if you can speak for the stakeholders also, is it being done, is it in a stage that when it can be done easily? Because you can have the best software, right? If they input it, well, it comes from actual processes, right? It must be digitalized in a format that's easy to enter and move forward. What's the status of the digitalization of the Customs and Excise Division at this point?
I would defer to Ms. Leach-Carter, who is more familiar with that. Through the chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. The current Asikuda system that we use it's working well for us as customs officers, but in terms of interfacing with other persons and other agencies, it's not where we're supposed to be. That's why we have the upgrade. So having ASI Hub, it will be as a built-in cloud-native platform using different technologies. So when for example, an agent upload a manifest into Asikuda, it automatically go into ASI Hub. The monitoring and scrubbing of a manifest, as we call it, will be much easier for us because it's more digitized. Right now, we have a lot of PDF documents in Asikuda. So it's digitized and easier for us to use the information to do, as I said, monitoring and targeting of, and improving the selectivity of cargo.
Through you, Chair. And this will be my last question for the time being. In terms of the modules and what you have set up here, right, digitalization, so I don't think you answered the question whether it is the status of the digitalization of your processes, but I presume it is being done, right? In terms of the training, do you have any idea, is this 18 months inclusive of the training of the various modules and the stakeholders also? Because you say, because really this ASI Hub, as you written it here, the hub really it's an interface between the stakeholders and your the division. Is it part of the process to train everybody so the system moves smoothly as once it's completed?
So, yes, as a matter of fact, presently we do have an entire class with officers who are supposed to be intended to be trained trainers. So the program is taking place right now. It has been running for the past couple of weeks, being conducted by the UNCTAD experts themselves. So yes, and the intention is when that trainer, after they've graduated, they then will be charged with the responsibility to develop the training programs that will be sent out, and including physical interaction with the stakeholders, particularly the brokers and clerks, as well as, and of course, the customs, the wider customs officers community.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This, through you, Madam Chair, is not only to the control of customs, but really it's to everybody in the room, each of the entities. For me, I'm requesting, not for today's purposes, but by way of a written submission coming from you after, a few data sets, really so that we can, as a group, understand better the connectivity of the persons and entities in the room, and then ultimately what the recommendations, at least from my purpose in discussion in the committee, will be as for recommendations to take us there. So for instance, the discussion on Asikuda has a historical background. Asikuda is the system that is implemented. You're forced to do ASI Hub because there's a harmonization effort. We have to have the codes and positions marry up. So the digitalization is going on. So it's an environment in which it's happening. But what I'd like to be, and I'd like to be as quick as possible if I could say this, I'm looking from each of the entities, first of all, for a process map of your interactions with the port and hub. That means, for instance, the customs brokers, etc., my line of approach will be in the following areas. I start here, I fill out 9 forms for 9 different purposes. They are submitted via this chain. We wait for a response. It comes back to us, and we achieve the following purpose, after which this happens. The second thing that I'm looking for, should it please you all, is an identification of where the roadblocks are in that process map. The third thing will be the consequence of the roadblock. So for members of the TTMA, members of the Chamber of Commerce, customs and clerk brokers, it would be demurrage charges, for instance. So demurrage is incurred at this point. The fourth thing would be, without revealing the names of the entities that you represent, if we could aggregate some of the data as to the type of costs that you're looking at. So when demurrage kicks in at a particular point, port rental kicks in at a particular point, well, then you can give some ideas as to what the typologies of costs are. So the TTMA may say, look, demurrage kicked in at a particular point, it is equal to X million dollars over X transactions. It runs for X period of time. We notice it happens at Christmas or when the ASICUDA system is down. So that's tied back to your roadblock. What it does is then it gives us some tangible data from which to make recommendations. For instance, should there be a sliding scale downward for the reduction in charges as a result of non-fault submissions? And things outside of your control. It's stuck in the system. It's a traffic light that I usually use to describe things: red light, yellow light, green light. So if I could get from you that information, it would be of assistance. The last thing that I'd say in summary is that I'd very much appreciate, and Mr. Controller in particular, your entity plays a huge role here, and the customs clerk as well. It would be what recommendations you would like to see that are legislative in nature that will assist you to getting to where you can relieve the roadblocks and problems that you have. If I could explain myself, Section 223 and 224 of the Customs Act, you may go through a process with the controller to deal with certain matters, or you may go to court. That would it be better done if there were a schedule that was prescribed up front? So an administrative penalty which could be applied by the customs agency in a schedule. It's how most other jurisdictions do it. Do you believe that beneficial ownership information put in would solve some of your crime and criminality problems? Those are some of the things that I'm looking for. So I'm looking for what steps you think need to be tweaked legislatively. For the Estate Police Association, for the Estate Police, if I may ask this specific question, I'm coming quickly to an end, Madam Chair. I see you smiling gently. I am taking one Anisette minute. That's for you, Mr. Anisette. It is this. You have defined responsibilities under the Supplemental Police Act. Those are such things as should be prescribed by law. I've not seen any prescriptions of law that apply in the estate police. What we do know is that crime and criminality is driven by importation and exportation issues, exposure to drug and other issues, etc., right? From that, that's a predicate offense. It takes the money laundering and other things. What I'd very much like to see from you is the data you have. Not only, I've seen your website, Estate Police, lots of industrial court decisions, nothing on charges and offenses and convictions. So how many interdictions happened? Who are the players, CPI? If you could focus on how many charges come to you, the steps to investigate customs and other offenses. I'm very conscious for the controller that you deal with more than just the port. Your ASICUDA system is for advanced cargo information on a plane. It could be at the port of Point Lisas. It could be on a ship coming in at Chagaramas. I understand that. But I'm really looking at the interdiction side of it now. What are your statistics on offenses, charges, investigations, and specifically, and I'll end here, what's the time frame that takes you there? that will tell us, for instance, the roadblock. Is it the DPP's consent? Is it a police prosecutor? Is it that you don't have someone? So, Madam Chair, that in an essence captures what I would like to ask for each of the benches to provide specifically, so that we have a data set that will then, when we overlay them onto each other, tell us we can make recommendations to fix A, B, C, and D. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Al-Rawi, and I wish to reassure our officials present that these requests for written submissions, the specific queries, will be compiled by the Secretariat, so you need not worry about trying to capture them verbatim, because I noted the looks of concern. So rest assured, we will compile those questions so that you would have it.
So Madam Chair, just to clarify, insofar as that's going to be written, and thank you for indulging me for a moment, the idea in explaining what I was doing just now is so that you would catch things that I may not have asked, but which you think is relevant to the topic. So with the broad inclusion for anything that has not been asked but you think is relevant, to please add to the data sets that we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Al-Rawi. Now, I wish to ask, with this digital upgrades to the ASICUDA, will this completely remove the requirements for manual transfers? Will it remove it, reduce it?
Chair, the intention is to go paperless and, yes, have it automated.
Thank you. And lastly, are you in a position to share what is the cost of these upgrades?
No, I'm not in a position to share that. I'm not familiar, but the information could be provided subsequently.
So, Madam Chair, that comes from Ministry of Finance that underwrote the aspect. And just to add that there would be need to amend the law in electronic transactions to take care of some things which are still by law prescribed to be required by paper. So certain aspects which are done by deed cannot be done paperless. They would have to be done in other ways. So the amendment would involve an amendment to say you click wrap a license or you certify in a different way.
Sure, understood. Now I wish to take us to the Chamber of Industry and Commerce with the questions. My first question is based on the observations made that notwithstanding the modernization efforts, statutory approvals take an inordinately long time. On average, how long does that take? Are you in a position to share?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would invite my CEO to provide the answer.
And with this question, just if you can give us an example. Yeah.
Sure.
Sure, Chair. We are in the process of compiling that data, and we will be able to send a written submission. As my president stated, we currently represent a diverse range of members, so we are tracking it by sector.
Understood. And would that also apply to a question, say, on examples of concerns you've had with the online platform? What are the specific challenges that members have experienced? Would
Correct,
that also
Chair.
apply, because it perhaps varies?
Correct, Chair. And what we are doing is that within the last 5 years, roughly 5 studies were done by the World Bank, by the IDB, as well as CDB. So we are looking at the comparative analysis to include it.
Okay, noted. Thank you. My next question is based on the contributions from the Port Authority. They made an observation during our inquiry, and it was stated that 88% of the delays are attributed to agents. And when they were asked, what are these agents' delays, they said that it would be awaiting load plans and documentation. Do you and other stakeholders present agree with the Port Authority's assertion that 88% of this is attributable to the agents and a lack of documentation in particular?
Chair, if I may just start initially, I think the percentage might be overstated. The majority of the users, at least those who are representative of my organization, are commercial users. So they are always readily prepared in terms of having their documentations to be presented at the points that they are required. I don't know if in capturing the data for presentation to the committee, the Port Authority might have been focused on a particular sector for which there is some shortcomings. So clarification really would be required as to who are the representatives of this 88% in default. Thank you.
Thank you. I also wish to invite the representative from the TTMA to also provide a perspective on that question with respect to concerns raised by the Port Authority attributing delays to lack of documentation by the agents. Has that been your experience?
No, it has not.
And the Shipping Association as well, I wish to invite you.
Thank you, Chair. So that's a broad statement made by the Port Authority. For us to really answer that question, we have to understand what process in particular is being referred to, the component parts of the process, and then you really have to drill down to understand what agents. Is it shipping agents? Is it another type of agent that they're referring to? So we have to really delve deeper and get a better understanding of the parameters that that comprises that response, that statement, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted and understood. So this question back to the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. Are you aware of issues experienced by the Port Authority and the Customs and Excise Division regarding incomplete documentation for cargo processing?
Madam Chair, I could answer that question in this way, because this is the information coming to me by members. There is sometimes disparity between the information that is contained on the documentation and when we look at the express provision that is made under the Customs Act in relation to the chargeable duty. So if the specification has a typographical error, if there is a misrepresentation in the slightest of form, that would raise some issues for concern or rejection. But to say specifically that we've had feedback or information in response to your question outside of what I just alluded to, the answer would be no.
Okay, thank you. Also noted from your contribution regarding the delays for the scanner and the examination of containers. From your perspective, what would aid in improving that process?
Before you go on, there were very specific questions about delays via agents, but the agents are sitting here. So before we went ahead, perhaps we could, out of fairness, give the customs clerks the opportunity to speak to the issue, because when I see agent, I see those who act, and they're usually the clerks, but we haven't put that question to them.
I think it's a fair question. Perhaps we could invite their own observations. So if you wish, you can pose the question directly.
The same question, please, to the TTMA and to the Chamber of Commerce, to the customs clerks, please. The submission was by the Port Authority. I'll read it. They said that when you have a vessel awaiting berth at the port at Anchorage, there are various factors that go into berthing a vessel. 88% of the delays are attributed to agents. So I don't know if there is an interaction by your association that they are perhaps speaking to. Is there? That's been a statement made. Perhaps you may wish to address that issue for us.
Through you, Chair. In terms of berthing of vessels, it's out of our jurisdiction, basically. However, from my knowledge, 88%, it seems like a little over the top. Because basically, when cargo arrives and manifests are delivered to the port, we have timely fashion. So I can see 88% as a...
The question, I think, and follow my distinguished colleague's approach, is that we hear a lot of things about things that being faster and these sort of things, but the actual measurement, do you all take measurements? And over a period of time, I mean, that was settled issue. So, right, without measurements, it's very subjective. We need some objective measures. Thank you, Chair.
Perhaps you might want to request that they provide us with this.
And maybe they should, in their report to us, they should give a measure of these, the sort of processes, the time to accomplish the processes, and maybe if they can indicate what causes any delays. So you can get an average sort of time for any issue.
And typologies.
Yeah.
Okay, I acknowledge you, the representative from the Shipping Association.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you again for the opportunity. The statement that was made suggests that this is more attributable to the shipping agents who are required to upload the documentation. So I think it would more fall under members of our organization. But in order for us to give any feedback on that, we would need to have some context as far as how they arrived at that number. 88% suggests that there's practically no compliance, and we find that curious, and I would think that a number that high would suggest that there would be some communication between ourselves and the port that speaks to that issue. So I think it more resides under our members who are agents who would be responsible for uploading the documentation in relation to load plans, etc. And we will be willing to look into that, but we need to have greater context.
Thank you. We will follow up with the Port Authority to get the requested feedback so that we can get the relevant responses from you on that matter. Now, of course, my question to the Chamber and Industry regarding the scanners was lost there, but I wish to revert to it. It was just to get your perspective on what recommendations, if any, you envision that could enhance that process from your end as an end user.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we are one of the end users. Of course, I must recognize my colleague Dale as being a key end user as well. The scanners have been pivotal in terms of the fast and efficient movement of the consignment and cargo out of it, and I have to compliment both the port and the Customs and Excise Division for the implementation. Part of the issue at hand is having the necessary infrastructure to make sure full operationalization at all times. So if we have any circumstance outside of the control of the Port of Authority or the Customs and Excise Division, say for electricity outage or power outage, that kind of planning process is not in place to ensure continuation of operations and seamlessness of the functionality. And that is where I would identify some of the concerns for us. Thank you.
Mr. Parson, did you wish to contribute as well to share your perspective?
Yes. So yes, there are delays at the port scanners. We were talking about that with Mr. Juman before, and he was explaining that there are scheduled times for containers to be scanned. However, there's a window of these schedules that some truckers must pull their containers within that specific scheduled time. And sometimes they miss the time. And the other issue is that in operating X-ray scanners, there's a radiation issue, and you can only operate it for probably about 3 hours at a time, correct me if I'm wrong. And then you have to relax because the people who are operating the scanners are at risk for radiation. However, I know that the scanners are operating for extended hours. But notwithstanding that, the delays are really because of missed schedules most of the times, or really, I would say it's more operational issues rather than systemic issues.
Thank you. This question is again directed back to the Chamber of Industry and Commerce. In your contribution, you noted that notwithstanding the modernization efforts, you're still burdened by administrative red tape. Are you able to elaborate on what specifically constitutes that red tape from your experience?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the feedback that we've received from our members, some of the issues identified would have been what I had alluded to earlier, the slight, what we will call minor inconsistencies in the description of cargo as presented on the consignment forms and as expressed in the schedule to the Act, some of which, our members are of the view should not result in delay in the clearing of cargo or the imposition of duty, because that sometimes happens, that the duty is imposed if in fact it should be subject to zero rated because of these very minor differences in typographical errors or missing some information on the forms. Outside of that, it would be, just as my colleague, Mr. Parson, alluded to, in terms of the truckers getting that appointment slot. I mean, we were privy in our side table conversations to get some of the back end that happens with the interface between the Customs and Excise Division and the Port Authority as to when an appointment is missed that contributes to the delays. And I would end my contribution by making this statement. That information could have been more forthcoming if there was that dialogue between all stakeholders so that we had that appreciation beforehand, because the question that we had posed in the side table conversation is, where is that information available to us as users of the facility? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Perhaps the present discussion underscores the request for the flowchart and identification of issues. Specifically, if the Chamber could identify for us, and again, feel free to anonymize information from your submissions. In other words, then we don't need to know who had the problem, but the typologies of the problem, because an error in description on a line item means it's a totally different product, which could result in a harmonization issue, either you're in the CET coverage or you're outside the CET coverage, and therefore Customs, I would assume, doesn't have a discretion in those circumstances. But your recommendation of the types of matters that you think can be treated in a different way and how it could be treated will mean the world of difference. So for things that are in X schedule, which are under Y value, there may be a different form of treatment, an undertaking, a bond, a letter of credit, so that the sanction can be covered by an alternative remedy, if you catch where I'm going. So what I would like to see from you is not just the usual way in which we describe problems. We want to modernize, we want it faster, we want more slots. What I'm looking for is the specifics. We have a problem with X, and we think it can be treated with this formula. We put a standing bond because the value is under $5,000. The bond could take care of any discrepancies, and you draw down on the bond or the letter of credit. So those are the things that I have in my mind as potential submissions from you that can perhaps take us to where we want to go. Because the last thing that any public officer, contract or otherwise, would want to expose him or herself to is misbehavior in public office for doing the wrong thing. Those of us who have served in public life understand that very well. So what is sometimes commercially a well-lying matter becomes a criminal matter somewhere else. So I have to be careful of how I balance the exercise in my mind. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chair, if I may, just an initial response to Member Alwari, and would not take away from our written submissions, Member. Those concerns were brought to us primarily by our members in the pharmaceutical distribution sector. So I hear where you are with it, and indeed we did submit recommendations to the Minister of Health. It was remiss of us, of course, not to carbon copy the Customs and Excise Division on that missive when it was sent out, because it did explicitly deal with those issues that you've raised. So I am happy that we are now afforded the opportunity that we could expand on those issues more frontally in our written response to the committee. And you're right, sometimes these items that are stranded, I'm using that word purposefully, might be items that are critically needed in the country at a particular time or for a particular purpose.
So
Thank
Madam,
you.
Madam Chair, if I could just quick rejoinder. This committee lends itself in a very bipartisan or multi-partisan way to make recommendations which could be currently lost in silo. Because when Ministry of Health receives something, Food and Drugs looks at it, it may get to Ministry of Finance. When it gets to Ministry of Finance, there may or may not be a policy from Customs awaiting shipping, awaiting immigration, which then has to go to a policy paper to the Attorney General to form a legislative perspective. What we have the opportunity to do here is to use your data to make specific recommendations in a harmonized platform. So I'd really like to encourage the data sets, and what I would recommend, Madam Chair, through you, perhaps you may wish to consider sharing the respective submissions across the room so that others may be aware as to what has been said, because from that we can crystallize or precipitate a solution to some of the mischiefs.
Okay, noted member. Mr. Parson, I acknowledge you.
Hi. So I just want to answer some of the questions that we have with regards to the gaps and the delays. I think that Assecutor Hub is going to solve a lot of our issues. Let me explain why. A typical example. Assecutor does not speak to TTBS. Assecutor does not speak to Food and Drug. It does not speak to even sometimes Ministry of Finance. So what happens by integrating all of the data into one hub with Assecutor Hub? What it's going to do is going to immediately an entry is processed by, let's say, my colleague Sandra Pierre from one of our members in the pharmaceuticals. It needs Food and Drug or chemistry approval. But sometimes Food and Drug chemistry approval does not have the data to answer those questions, and it has to be built out. The data from Food and Drug is lacking. And Assecutor is asking for it, but it's not there. So now what you have to do, what is done presently, is a paper trail. Somebody physically have to deliver paper or fax it or email it. And that's what happens. Another example, you import a car. Every time you import a car, TTBS have to approve the tires, whether it's new or foreign use. So you physically have to, your customs clerk have to drive down to TTBS. 2 days wasted. And if hopefully it's processed the same time, because if it's not, you have to go back, come back the next day for it. 2 days gone already. That's another gap and consequence that can be easily measured, Member Alwari. So these are gaps. So another one, for example, if you don't have a bond established with customs, you have to do a certified check. With the ACH system, the money will go strictly into a customs account and is not commingled with the rest of government funds. And that can be easily disaggregated and be accounted for very clean and nice through an ACH system. So the Assecutor Hub, just supporting them a little bit about the benefits of it, is going to solve a lot of problems. NAVIS, which is the shipping association, does not communicate with Assecutor right now. So when the vessel out in the ocean coming in, what happens in other ports that where NAVIS, which is the shipping software, is integrated with Assecutor, they speak to each other. So 2 days before the ship come in, NAVIS already talked to Assecutor in Trinidad and say, hey, I have a ship coming with 85 containers, and 10 is for Alwari, and 3 is for Ms. Vandana Mohit, and so we going. And it already speak to everybody. 2 days before it arrived, the shipping agents now get notification, hey, you are the shipping agent for Alwari, lodge your documents one time. So what is happening with the Assecutor Hub? And because I had an in-depth on it with Minister of Finance and Mr. Juman. So I know the mechanics exactly for how it's working and how it's going to solve a lot of our problems that we're talking about here. So I think that the 18 months, I don't know if it could be, if we could short circuit that into, I don't know, maybe bite size and prioritize which modules need to be done first. But I will tell you for sure, the things that pharmaceuticals have, the things that the car importers have, is all delays. There's another one, phytosanitary, which I didn't even mention, which needs to be linked to TTBIS, linked through Assecutor. It's so many different moving components when you import something that Asecuda have to get, and customs not going to allow it. It's not just putting a wrong harmonized HS code on a system, a wrong description, and causing a red flag. And also, with all of that too, with the intelligence of, with the use of AI, you can even assess how, if the passing containers are always sketchy, or is green or is red. Strictly with an algorithm of frequency of risk and documents and so on, wrong information in Asecuda. So I think what just to support him a little bit, I think, and answer a lot of the questions you're talking about here, the Asecuda hub is going to solve a lot of our problems. I think the bigger challenge, and the flowchart, we could do the flowchart, that's very easy, and show the consequences, and what Mr. Prakash Prasad mentioned about measuring the time, that is very easy. Everybody have that. Time is demurrage and rent. So we know that like back of your hand. Everybody know that.
Madam Chair, if I could just say how simple this is, but how complicated it can be. The mere sharing of data alone under the Data Protection Act was a huge problem in law across interagencies, because the law says that it's sensitive information, financial information, etc., in certain circumstances. We had to go all the way to the Privy Council in a case called Suraj, which upheld a case called Surat. Took 7 years to get the Privy Council to say, look, you could do certain things by simple majority. And therefore, the delays in implementation to buy Asecuda, which happened some years ago, the hub, were because in law we just couldn't get over hurdles. So what sounds as simple, giving your fingerprints at the airport, you have to have the law that will allow you to actually do that. So the Data Protection Act was a huge hurdle interagency until Suraj's decision recently, in fact, under my tenure. So fortunately, those things are out of the way, but I would like to let the public know it's not as if bright ideas weren't being taken into effect. We were constrained by the law, and we had a lot of fighting over the law with a lot of threats as to who would strike down which law or not, which I won't go into today.
Chair, I was not being critical about,
That was for the benefit of the public, because what you're explaining is extremely useful and hopeful, and I thank you for putting those submissions on to the public record as somebody that has had a deeper insight into this, because I know quite a bit about the system, but I like hearing it from you.
Okay.
Mr. Parson, I didn't take your comments as criticism. In fact, you were very clear that you were trying to be supportive, and it was encouraging to know there's some aspects of the upgrade that will be helpful, and your contribution certainly gave us insight into how these disruptions affect the end users in very practical terms. Ms. Leach-Carter, I acknowledge you that you wish to respond.
Okay, I just want to clarify something that was said by Mr. Parsons. The connection with Asecuda and TT BizLink in terms of food and drug, TTBS, and all these different agencies, there's an administrative lane within Asecuda. We do everything electronically. So the passing of paper from one agency to another, it's minimal unless somebody's bringing an additional document uploaded onto Asecuda. Once you enter a document into Asecuda as an entry, the import document, there are administrative lanes on a specific tariff heading numbers. Once it's entered, it triggers the respective agency that needs to deal with it. The agency then sees it. So we don't have to call anybody. Within Asecuda itself, the document comes up yellow, which means it needs an agency interaction. The agency then deals with it. If they want to examine the cargo, they're going to put it red or blue. Red means it cannot leave the cess station. Blue means it can go to the premises for examination. Or if they put it green, then customs will now say, okay, fine, it's okay to go. So that interface between customs and the agencies, it is built in an Asecuda already in an administrative lane. So I just wanted to correct that part of what was said.
Okay, thank you. Your feedback is noted. And lastly, for the chamber, of Industry and Commerce. The other questions, we will send them for written response. This is based on your contribution at page 4, where you said that feedback is obtained through the TT Chamber's participation with Joint Customs Consultative Committee. And in that forum, all border-related trade facilitation issues are ventilated, including issues affecting the operations of the port. Has the Chamber seen any evidence or any fruits, any improvements coming out of these Joint Consultative Committee meetings?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the opportunity. I actually was to use that as an example in response to Member Parsons' contribution, that the participation in that committee is what allows the stakeholders to feed the information to the Customs and Excise Division for the upgrade system. So we are well in tune with the progression of the upgrade and the information that is needed to better serve the end users. I would say this, and no offense to my colleague, the comptroller here, we have discussed the re-energizing of the JCC, and it is an action item. But in the moments that the JCC was operationalized and participation was fully attended, it provided the Chamber and the business community the opportunity to bring to the attention of the stakeholders, the Customs and Excise Division, and by extension the Port of Spain, what the problems the business community were encountering, and we were able to come up with solutions collectively. So it really was a very consultative process.
Thank you for that, Ms. Pierre-Chase. Just give me one moment, please. Ms. Anisat, this question is with respect to claims about radiation with the use of this scanner, that it should not be operated, can only be operated for 3 hours daily. How does that impact?
I could speak in the context of the workers. We are not intimately involved in radiation, but containers have to go EG to the cess station, so that if there is a limited time, it will obviously affect the productivity level and the amount of containers that will be able to go to the cess station, which is the custom examination station, for examinations. The radiation was an issue. Yeah, there was some protests within the early stage of the scanner, but we were able to get over that hump and kind of alleviate the fears that workers had as it relates to the kind of damage that could have occurred if you interface with the scanners.
You can ask a specific question.
Sure.
Or 2, do the workers who operate the scanners, do they have radiation badges? They do? Because that normally gives an indication, as to when it's not safe again. So was the 3 hours based on that?
Yes, they do wear dosimeters.
No, but was it based on that, or is it?
The 3 hour.
I am not aware of that 3 hour stress role. First time I'm hearing about it here.
Because, like a lot of the allied health workers and the hospitals do x-rays, etc., they do radiation, these things all the time, and they wear the badges. But once the badge says, well, you're nearing a sort of dangerous level, you stop. But I've never heard of this, specific time period.
So, through the chair, if I may,
Sure.
in that side discussion that we had, that Mr. Parson had spoken about, I think there were a number of conversations was taking place. It's not that there's a 3-hour window, not at all. We were discussing the fact that the scanners commence scanning at 7 a.m. and they usually shut down operations between 9:30. It's the same team that operating from 7 a.m. to 9:30.
Yeah.
PM, that is. Sorry, PM. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So it's a crew with 2 sets of operators. All right? And what was discussed, or the point that was made by Ms. Leach-Carter at that point was that when you have staff that has been at it from 7 a.m. to 9:30 plus PM, and that stopping operations doesn't mean that they get home at that point in time. The going beyond that is not practical. There's exhaustion. You've been looking at a screen over a protracted period of time, etc. As time goes along, the ability to detect certain things diminishes. Looking at a screen is an image. Some of this stuff is proprietary, so we can't talk too much about that. But yes, so that's the context in which that was said. So the 3 hours is no, and yes, the staff do have dosimeters.
Was came from nowhere then.
No.
But it wasn't you, it was said that the port said that.
Oh, the port said
Yes,
that?
it came from elsewhere.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So that, and a lot of times, is there any consideration being given to sort of automating that process is done elsewhere? When you look at like the airports and stuff like that, examining luggage, these sort of things, it's done automatically, yeah? So any thinking in that regard?
So in those jurisdictions, they allow drive-through scanning, where there's a fixed portal, the trucks move through a particular speed, and the image is analyzed quite often remotely. The problem with that, though, in our culture and what we've been accustomed with here, and I'm glad that my colleague, Mr. Anisette, is here because, we're working together to deal with this. In the original scanners that we had, that had a live radiated source, the teething issues that we had and got accepted from that perspective, this is the modus operandi for these scanners, the issue of radiation was a big deal. We've brought equipment now that is even more advanced, but it doesn't have a live radiated source. Having the drive-through, there's a perception, even though the system is designed to detect the cab, low dose radiation, the space, high dose radiation for the container. There's that element that is going to breed skepticism from the user, and so until we could cross that bridge and allow the drive-through scanning, the full extent of the automation that you speak about, Member Prasad, has to be approached at methodical and systematic.
Okay, just last a quick comment. I think once we mix things, I've seen systems where you have same module software, but there's human intervention in between. What the end result is a system that is twice as inefficient as each individual system. So if you modernize it, I would assume you need to update, you need to inform people, educate people that radiation, you face radiation all the time. People have the phone on the airs day and night. That's radiation. So I think it's a matter of I'm not trivializing the issue. Exactly. So I think what we need to modernize, and whilst you're modernizing, you need to bring about a cultural change. So their education is extremely important. So I would suggest, that something be done about that. But there's no point talking about modernization, and you're not using the advantages of modernization. I will just end there.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Member Chaitanra, do you wish to ask a few questions?
Hi, yeah. Good afternoon, Chair. Through you to Mr. Aniset and team. In the discussion leading on from the 3 hours, it was stated that the shifts run from 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. in the night, and there is the issue of fatigue. The submissions from Mr. Aniset's team stated that the port often operates with a skeleton crew, with shift arrangements being disrupted by unplanned overtime, etc. So the questions are threefold. First, how many workers are currently rostered per shift? What would the ideal number per shift be? And to round it out, what are your current number of members in the union?
Current members, 1,200. The question of the shift rotation, one, and the allocation is dependent on the gang sizes. Okay, so you cannot have what I will want to call a fixed allocation, because if there's 4 gangs on a vessel, the employment level will increase, as opposed to if you have 1 gang. But we have what we'll want to call dedicated numbers of ship-to-shore operators, rubber tire gantry operators, stevedores, etc. We are now in the process, and may I make that point, Madam Chair, of finally finalizing the 3-shift system and to modernize the concept of what dock work is supposed to be, in keeping with the ILO conventions, where we will call workers now dockers, as opposed to individual names as we have presently. And may I also say that, thank God, that the 2014 to 2017 collective agreement that was signed off in 2025, that is only now being implemented. And we want to thank the new board and the chairman for taking that positive stand, because for the life of the union, we could not understand why there was a resistance to implement a best practice, international practice, that resulted in a lot of fatigue, meaning that workers were working excess overtime. Why? Because Saturday and Sunday and public holidays was not considered a shift. It was an overtime period. So Monday to Friday, we had a 3-shift, but Saturday, Sunday, and public holidays, we were working overtime. And coincidentally, from our records, that we had about 65% of the course which was inherent in armed shift. So that, one, we have reached that stage. We are meeting with the Port Authority next week, may I say, in order to finalize the 5 and 7. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to satisfy, the Chamber of Commerce, the shipping associations, and all the other parties, because that is something that has been asked for as far back as 2014. So we are now in the process of finalizing that aspect of the negotiations, and we anticipate that we will see some major improvement as it relates to deliverables, and more importantly, workers getting the rest that they so deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Aniset. Through you again, Madam Chair. You've answered some of the other questions that we would have had regarding your union's approach and opinion towards moving towards a shift system. We recognize your mentioning that the board has moved to this as well. Going into a shift system versus overtime would require more staffing. we would imagine, for rostering and schedules. So the question we would then pose is regarding recruitment. Which critical posts would you describe as still vacant? How long they have been vacant as well?
The question of regularizing the workforce and confirming workers, because we have instances in the port still exist that people are working as much as 6, 7, 8 years, continuously, as much as 10 years. We are still in the process of trying to drill down regularizing those groups of workers. And that's a major problem that we have on the port that creates a lot of discontentment within the workforce, because we cannot understand it, but we are working towards getting that regularized. We are hoping with this new board they will see the wisdom of getting that out of the way so that we can do all the things that we say we want to do and what we can do and what we are capable of doing. But I want to end by saying, when I made my opening remark, unless we have the infrastructure, as long as we have the equipment, as long as there is the kind of environment and the kind of training that is necessary to bring about the best practice globally within the Port of Spain. All right, all that I'm saying here will be just words. And from the union perspective, we have been arguing for international best practice to make the port competitive, and we are committed to working with the port and all stakeholders to ensure that the port realize its potential.
Thank you. Ms. Anisette, are there any other questions that you wish to ask Dr. Chaitan Raj? Okay. Member Al-Rawi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Anisette, thank you so much for your information. It's very useful. I'm warm to hear of the move towards international best practice. Being conscious that many ports in international best practice operate on a 24-hour basis, and being aware of the move in shifts and away from overtime, is there any concept of a 24-hour operation of services? Perhaps this question overflows to the Customs and Excise Division as well and the Port Authority, where perhaps in terms of cost mitigation, persons may elect to have nighttime services with the common sense of having trucks and containers move with less traffic and easier flow. But is this something that is in active discussion with the union at present?
Allow me to make it lucidly clear. We do operate 24/7 on the port.
Sorry, I do mean in terms of the cost examination, which stops at 9:30.
No, well, I cannot
so
answer for the customs.
So forgive me,
the
the preface to this was that we had just exited a discussion of 7 to 9:30 p.m. and that the manpower in relation to that was an issue. So the question really now is the throughput through that bottleneck of the radiation point or the people looking at screens for extended hours. So if that station is working on a longer basis, perhaps overnight, the rest of the services can articulate around that. So forgive me, I omitted to say that that is where I was coming from. So is there any form of discussion, customs and the union, in terms of a longer period, perhaps even a 24-hour period?
Okay, through the chair. So as far as the extending beyond the 9:30, there's a staffing issue. I know presently there are moves to expand the establishment to cater for the increase in staff. The other element of that, we have no control over the times that the port remains open, so that is a question for the Port Authority and I guess my colleague, Mr. Anisette. But from a customs perspective, yes, as a matter of fact, in an effort to ensure, to start to build capacity for it, It's now been incorporated as a standard part of the training for all our new recruits that you are scanner trained. So once you're graduated, you can serve any of the other departments as well as, and particularly, the scanner unit.
Okay, as we were mentioning, the scanner, just for the benefits of the viewing and listening audience, who operates this scanner? Is it the port or the customs? Who operates this scanner?
So the port has, the customs operates the scanners. Two of the mobile scanners, there are two mobile scanners in Port of Spain and one fixed scanner. Customs operate all of them. The customs owns the mobile scanners.
It's done in an ecosystem, so entry, egress, estate officers, port authority workers, to get it off the dock, to have it loaded and bay. So the way I looked at it, which is why I asked Mr. Anisette for his point of view as well, was in the ecosystem of moving there. Because it might very well be that people, in deference to avoiding demurrage or port rental, will happily say, well, yeah, I'll take a nighttime move because I'll get out fast and I have no traffic and, you know, I can do so. The movement towards 24-hour, I think, is positioned. Perhaps I could add into the list of questions that you would provide us what any cost or other implication of 24-hour container scanning would be amongst the groups in the rooms. So customs, do you have a costing? But we'll need 2 extra shifts at nighttime. What would the rate be? Would the estate police be involved? Would the customs brokers be involved? Would the union be involved in that sort of scenario? So therefore we could make a sensible recommendation saying out of our inquiry, it has been discerned that the cost of running a 24-hour shift would be the following, and here are the pros and cons. Thank you.
Thank you, Member. This question I wish to direct to Mr. Anisette. It comes out of your submission that there are several operational constraints, particularly regarding aging equipment, and the Port Authority informed this committee that it operates a structured preventative maintenance regime supported by the CMMS Dynastar. In your experience, has this been functioning as described?
Fortunately, you know, that is just words. I like to deal with the reality. The reality on the ground floor is not what has been articulated by the Port Authority because of aging equipment, and there's a lot of equipment, like the ship-to-shore gantry. We have about 3 that is more than 20-something years old now, which has gone past its life cycle. And you will understand what are the implications for keeping these equipment, which is critical for the operations, because the ship-to-shore operations, right? They take off the containers from the berth, put it on the container, chassis to take to the holding bay or the container terminal. So that we have that particular problem. One of the issues that we also have is the issue of procurement. Because most of the time, if a piece of equipment is broken down, the question of real-time inventory for those equipment is not there. And inevitably, we have a lot of delays as a consequence of that. So that the reality is that we have to start to address that particular reality. Consequence of that inability and inadequacy, what we find is that overtime is consistent and regular because the port, unlike customs, we cannot shut down, we have to work. When the ship come there, we cannot tell the ship anything. So we try to work miracles, the workers, in order to keep the port going, and the port does work 24/7 as it relates to the port operations. I can talk to the port operations where we represent the workers, but the fallback was that when we agreed in 2025, in September 2025 to the 5 and 7, there was a change in regime, and that concept was kicked down the economic ladder. Let me put it that way. But we are at that point now where it has been revised. There are some agreements, and we are going to see a 5 and 7 soon. And for the records, what happens is that while we work 5 and 7 on the port, however, Saturday and Sunday is public holidays. And when I say public holidays, meaning you get paid like if you work on public holidays, because Saturday and Sunday is considered overtime period. It's only Monday to Friday. We work a 3-shift system without attracting any overtime. When you go into Saturday, Sunday, or public holidays, you attract overtime, which is double time for the first 8 hours, and it goes up. And we work 3 shifts right through Sunday to Sunday.
Okay, thank you. Member Mohit.
Thanks a lot, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, when we last heard from the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, we were informed in this committee that they operate by an appointment system. The TTMA and the Chamber is here, and from a committee's perspective, I'd just like to hear how the appointment system is working, because, Mr. Parson, earlier you would have mentioned missing schedule times. And if the port is engaging in an appointment system, I'm wondering how you are missing schedule times. Not you, but users, of course. So how has this system been working for your members?
Madam Chair, the scheduling I was referring to was the X-ray scanning. So not everything goes by X-ray scanning. There's also CES scanning as well, and that's also scheduled. And that takes a lot longer time than the scanners.
So what are some of the services you have to make appointments for, the port make appointments with your members?
Our appointments are mainly with customs.
Customs.
Yes, because once the vessel discharges the containers, it's on the port, so it's time to clear. So the next hurdle is customs. So customs have schedules and so on, because they have limited staff and they only work certain hours. So we have to really stick to their schedules. You know, if for some reason a truck is stuck in traffic and misses his X-ray scanning, I mean, he have to wait for our next appointment. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that's how the scheduling system works. Really, it is tied into a lot to customs.
Sure. Madam Chair, just another question, and Mr. Juman, I'm very sorry, but I have to also speak on behalf of my constituents. Over the last 2 years or so, coming from Shogunas, I got a few complaints about the treatment of users of the port by customs officers. Specifically, one of the problems which was brought to my attention was that of all the documentation being provided. One person actually said to me, it's 30-something years I am importing these items. This is the actual price of the item, but a custom officer is questioning me in my 30-something years of operation. And based on that, I want to ask you today, what type, my colleague would have asked about the digital training in terms of the scanners, etc. What type of training you have for these customs officers who have to interface with members of the business community or users of the port as it relates to this type of, treatment to these members of, I'm not sure the TTMA or even the chambers coming from different parts of the country, because it is a typical complaint. It is not today. It is for years this is happening, and persons have been asking about it.
Okay. Member Mohit. We probably open a can of worms here. We are, there's a major issue that we have with inconsistent values. Valuation fraud is a big problem that the customs faces. At one of the previous committees like this I sat, there was overvaluation being an issue there, right? And so I'm also aware that the upgrade also speaks to some targeting that would help us address both overvaluation as well as undervaluation. But let me say this. Every importer that brings in their items have paid the proper price for it. But when I have my valuation officers in there doing due diligence, finding that the established, how does phrase it needing? Acceptable norms of values for the items identical or similar, being way above that, and in quite a few instances, the actual invoices are provided by or are revealed during our investigations. We see exactly how prevalent valuation fraud is. So we do have, getting back to the other part of the question concerning training, my valuations department is a very specialized one. We've placed a lot of emphasis because we realize how prevalent it is. Now, this is not broad brushing all importers, not at all. But then, by the same token, not all items that enter the territory are flagged for valuations review. Based on intelligence, information, market trends, etc., we determine what particular items we want to look at, and that varies. So when we start to notice that the level of fraud being committed, so to speak, for that particular item, you find we may take it off the valuations, that the system, so it's not flagged for that, and we look for something else. So it is a big problem. The valuations department, as I said, is very specialized, and we do have specialist training for all officers who then undergo additional training with the valuations department to look for those things. I don't know if that answers your question.
It answers part of it.
Okay.
It's just part of it. The other part, I don't think I'll be able to ask you that on TV.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chukwan,
Hi,
your question?
Through the chair. Just for clarity, the member Mohit asked about a question about appointments, and I'm just wondering if the appointments you were referring to related to appointments to have containers released from the port. So there are two slots that you can actually make appointments where the haulers themselves will be able to access and pull the containers. That's in the morning and then in the afternoon. And we had a side conversation earlier on where we were talking about how are we able to coordinate haulers being able to access those containers within that morning period, and then, if referred to CES, be able to actually make the scanning appointment. So you have two different sets of appointments. One might be a 4-hour window in the morning, and then you may have a very specific window in the morning at 7 to 8 that you might have to have your scanning appointment. So I'm not sure if you were referring to the port's appointment system for accessing the containers rather than having it scanned.
Well, what the port informed us is they operate by an appointment system. So that's why I asked all entities, what type of appointments are you required to set up for whichever services they may have specified, because I don't think that was specified to us. So now that you have outlined, we're able to somewhat understand the types of appointments that they have moved to, appointment system that they have moved to, because they would have indicated to us in terms of the delays that they now have an appointment system to deal with their stakeholders who would require use of the port, whether it be to collect containers, etc., if I'm correct and I recall correctly. Yeah?
Thank you. I believe I have a question from Mr. Alexander, is it?
Chair, through you, that appointment system that the port spoke about, I think they generalized that appointment system. They spoke of general cargo being able to make an appointment, which is LCL, at also Shed 10. Just before here, I went onto the system, Navis, to see if we were able, because they mentioned that brokers were able to do appointments for LCL as general cargo, and that was not there. I know it's probably there for the shipping agents to book an appointment for us to leave the barrel station with any shipment. Now, at the barrel station, you have both non-trade and you have trade cargo. All right, so we as brokers and clerks are not able to make that appointment. That appointment is done by the shipping agent. All right, and if we miss that appointment, and we may miss that appointment with several hiccups happening, either the cargo was not able to be examined in time by customs because of some sort of labor issue, forklift or so, you have to now get another appointment in order to leave the port. So you have to call your agent to actually get another appointment. The walk-ins that they spoke about is basically for the barrel trade, the persons that will come and Tanti who will come and clear a barrel or so, has a walk-in, all right? But for trade cargo, that appointment system is not available on the custom clerk and custom broker side. The other appointment they spoke about is appointment for containers to leave the port, all right? And that's a 6 to 11, 11 to 3, 7 to 3, and 3 to 11. Those are time slots for containers to leave the port. There's another appointment for scanning, and I think the scan appointment slots are 1 hour slots. So those are the appointments I think the port was alluding to, but the only way that we, custom clerk and brokers, can make the appointment is that, well, we don't actually make the truckers who will make the appointment to leave. We release it in Navis to them, and they will go ahead and make the appointment. So we don't really have much control of the appointment, but it's the truckers and the shipping agents who will give us the appointments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Mr. Chukwan, I acknowledge you, but I just want to find out, Mr. Parson, did you also have a question that you wish to raise?
No, sorry. I was going to just explain to Member Mohammed how customs verify, but I think I should not discuss that, values of different items. But, I mean, it's no secret that you can go on the internet now and find out what's the cost of 2025 BMW X5 is 70,000 US, and if you see an invoice coming in for 20,000 US right away, that raises a red flag. Or if you buy, I don't know, some fancy new dress for Carnival, and the regular price is 100 US, but on Amazon, and you go on Amazon and see it is 200 US, easily is undervalued. So, I mean, there are easy ways that you can verify, because prices over 30 years cannot be constant, sorry.
Chair, if I may, just to put some context, I didn't get to finish. I omitted to mention this in responding to Member Mohit. When we talk about the undervaluation, interfering with values, the undervaluation, the reason why customs plays such a big part and emphasis on it is because it deprives government of revenue. So I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there and it is. I mean, I don't want to get into too much of the nitty-gritty, the how, the when, the whys, etc. Those are, and yes, we can have the conversation off camera where that's concerned.
Madam Chair, I understand the undervaluing part of it, because I know you have a system where they have that opportunity to come in, have a meeting, etc. So I'm aware of that. But in terms of the interfacing as well, and customer service training, that was one of my questions I asked about, which has been a problem for some time now with customs officers and users of
The one area that is super sweet is CPI and enforcement, because boy, do they catch you with sweet talk. They're very, very good. Compliments to them.
Okay, but So that satisfies you, Member Mohit? Okay, great. I don't want you to get lost in the questions, Mr. Chukwan. I acknowledge you. Go ahead.
Thank you again for the opportunity. So, yeah, what I first referred to was the appointment system to have full containers pull and exit the port, but there also is an appointment system, as my colleague mentioned, for less than container load shipments that are being cleared at the transit shed facility. So the issue of customers missing their appointment, I'm aware that other facilities have a contingency in place where if you are given a particular time slot, let's just say you're given an appointment between 8 and 9, and you miss your appointment, you are put in the back. So that the idea behind it is that you want to be able to manage the flow. And if you can't have people arrive, being given an appointment between 8 and 9 and showing up at 11 o'clock. So they will facilitate you, but based on an allocation later on in the day. So I know that exists at other facilities, but yes, there is an appointment system for less than container load shipments.
Thank you, Mr. Chukwan. Any further questions? Oh, fine. Okay, great. So I wish to direct this question now to the Shipping Association. So this might be you, Mr. Chukwan. In your submission regarding operational bottlenecks, you identified staffing and equipment issues that most frequently drive the delays. Which of these equipment failures, in your view, negatively impacted berth movements and vessel turnarounds? And how often do these things occur?
Thank you. I'll defer to my president for comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. So in our submissions, we would have identified a critical underpinning of efficiency on the port remains the equipment availability and the optimal ratios of equipment. So you need to have the associated ship-to-shore gantry cranes operated with relevant number of trucks, tractor trucks and trailers, and of course the RTGs, the rubber tire gantries. So that it's almost like a process plant, if you come to think about it. You need to have the relevant ratios of the necessary equipments to operate, and any one of those that has a breakdown for whatever reason will interrupt the process in terms of, and will of course interrupt the operational efficiency of the working of the particular ship, etc. With regards to trucks, the yard equipment, the RTGs, the rubber tire gantries, or the reach stackers, any unavailability of those equipments for whatever reason, preventative maintenance or unplanned maintenance, will impact the delivery aspects that my colleague was referring to when the haulers comes for the container and for the delivery of the container to exit the port. So our submission was really to identify the issues with the equipment and how it can impact on the operational efficiencies. With regards to the details on the statistics with regards to the frequency of the breakdowns, etc., we will get that on a basis where one of our members may complain or we hear it on the news or something of the sort. But I just wanted to bring to the table the importance of having the equipment and not just having a piece of equipment available, but there's a particular ratio of equipment availability that must be present to ensure that you have optimum efficiency. With regards to the staffing and staff issues, of course, a port is a mix of capital intensive and labor intensive. So you need the labor to operate the equipment, and any industrial action or any activities of that nature will, of course, impact on the ability to operate the equipment and operational efficiency of the port. So that was the point I wanted to bring across on this matter, and the importance of staffing and equipment availability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Additionally, based on your contribution, you stated that the Shipping Association assisted the Supermarkets Association with respect to the issues on the Sea Bridge in February. What specific operational accommodation or contingency measures were agreed upon, and were they implemented as promised?
Thank you, Chair. Approximately 1 month ago, I would have received a call from a representative from the Supermarkets Association. I believe it was the general manager or CEO. And they were seeking advocacy or assistance, facilitation, knowing that, well, the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago is a member of our association. So they needed some assistance because obviously there was delays in getting the trucks on board and across to Tobago. And their members in Tobago were having issues with regards to inventory. So what we did in line with our approach of advocacy and assisting our friends and the other associations, is that we, picked up the phone, we contacted our port management representatives and asked that they assist in whatever way to assist with regards to getting the necessary contingencies in place to get the goods across to the sister isle. So I believe that our role was to make that contact, speak to the port, make them aware of the urgency of the situation. Not that we don't know about it, but it's the role that we had to play, and we brought them together, Supermarkets Association and the port, to have further discussions. And I guess they would have discussed whatever operational contingencies, et cetera, to get to bring some sort of resolution to the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. As we are, nearing a close, I just want to invite any other members who have questions for the Shipping Association. If you do, you may do so now. Okay, no further questions. I wish to direct my next question to the Customs Clerks and Customs Brokers Association. In your view, what are the main operational deficiencies at the port from your perspective?
Thank you, Chair. One of our main concerns or operational hazards on the port is when the system fails. And the system I'm talking about, the programming system. When the Navis system goes down, the port basically goes to sleep, so to speak, because nothing comes in, nothing goes out, nothing is loaded, nothing is unloaded. There are no proper strategic contingencies in place when the system goes down. So basically, everything is at a standstill. This is one of our major concerns. Some other concerns that be highlighted would be breaking down of equipment and sometimes the industrial action. Not to toot any horn, my colleague, but industrial action affects in a great manner as well, because in previous years, it was worse because we were never informed of such things. More recently, when industrial action is taken, we have more communication between the managers. So it helps a little so we could share to our membership. And, well, these are the main concerns of the Custom Clerks and Custom Brokers Association.
Thank you. Want to touch on the issue with equipment. During the committee's first public hearing, the port advised that it's well-equipped and currently has 5 ship-to-shore cranes. But does the shortage of equipment refer to the ship-to-shore cranes or other equipment?
Yes, Chair. The ship-to-shore cranes, yes, they do have 5, and they basically does not hamper our work, basically. The other cranes, however, those are the ones that majorly impact us.
That's it? Okay, thank you. One last question I have for you. It is with respect to crisis management strategies, right? Your association, in its feedback, said that you're not aware of clearly defined and standardized contingency protocols during system failures. So what crisis management protocols and strategies have the port communicated to the...
I'd refer this question to Mr. Alexander.
Through you, Chair. The port, the previous management, we would not have had any or much communication at all. Currently, we have a little more, they will meet with us. I think they met with us last Friday and so. However, if there's an issue at the port, with any crisis issue, we tend to now get some communication saying, well, look, this is happening, and we will get like, sometimes it's like 2-hour hourly the updates, what is happening at the port, so that we will probably be able to make different arrangements. But in the past, we would not have had much or any communication at all. I know they try to communicate a little more, especially with the shipping association, because most of these, if a crisis or anything, it will affect the vessels that are being, the vessel operation in most cases. For us to deliver cargo or have any delays where that is concerned, it don't really hamper us much. But we will get the communication via electronic. However, we wish that it will just be a little more expedient and a little more clearer, so that you don't have to wait to look on an email. It could probably be, let's say, if it's a blast, text, WhatsApp or so. Sometimes we have to wait, and not everybody will be able to access an email. And sometimes it go directly to the head of your organization, and not just you as an individual.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. On the same theme or topic of crisis management, I now wish to turn to the Estate Police Association. Now, you've also indicated that there's no clearly defined crisis management plan, and you're hindered by the absence of communication. Have you raised these concerns with the port? And if so, what are these strategies and solutions that have been proposed, if any?
Ms. Lewis will take this question.
To you, Chair. So in times past, what I can say is that we would have normally, the Port Authority would have done like a listing in terms of who you can relate or communicate if a crisis happens. So that number will be visible for everybody. You will see this in a chart, but those persons have since left the work, retired, or passed on. So there's never been a replacement. So in terms of when it pertains to officers, they, yes, will rely on the training in terms of if a crisis happens, but it has to go deeper than their training. It must be something that is set by the Port Authority in terms of who to communicate, who must be contacted first, and where the role of command come from. Yes, we will be able to take instructions on the go, by the end of the day, something clear must be put forward and must be stated for everybody to be able to follow in case of a crisis. Because we all know, crisis is not something that you can plan for, but it could be ad hoc and it could cause a lot of chaos. And in that chaos, what we need is stability. So in terms of putting forward that, it was never communicated, or that discussion never really, materialized. But it's something that, as was responded here, that we should look into, and thanks very much for pointing that out, that we should bring it up and raise it as a concern, because I think we go about our life thinking, everything is everything, but until something happens, and not relying only on what the officer was trained to, or the fact that they may have working radios. In terms of things not working as they're supposed to, there must be something stable that they could depend on for the safety of the Port Authority and the users. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there drills, safety emergency drills, and how often are those done, if you can share?
Okay, to you, Chair. Yes, there are safety drills. We do drills, whether it's tabletop drills or real drills, but they are done more or less through the ISPS part of it. So I can't say at this point in time when was the last one done, but we normally have drills that incorporate different scenarios that will look at different crises that could happen, but it does not encompass the whole port. So it will be done basically for the Port Police Department, and a drill will be done. Some parts of the areas of the port will probably be included, but it will not include all the stakeholders. It will wouldn't be on a large scale. So again, that in itself has its limitations.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. I believe Member Thomas, you had a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the Estate Police Association, I have two questions. One, I have noticed from visiting the port in Tobago that there is a serious deterioration with uniforms and other equipment that would properly take care of the business of the port. That is one question. And the second question is, I have had the reason to manage a safety situation on the port in my previous incarnation. And there seems to be no plan, absolutely no plan. When there is a crisis, the incident involved a bomb scare on the vessel. And there wasn't even an attempt by management to evacuate the port. I don't know whether you have standards, or you have training, or you recognize the magnitude of what happens on the port, or what can happen on the port when you have a crisis situation. Could you enlighten us on what happens or what is supposed to happen, and whether we are properly taking care of our responsibility to train on the port? And I am also aware that presently on the port in Tobago, there is no safety officer that is in charge. I spoke to the most senior person about 2 weeks ago, and the individual was saying to me that she is restricted from supervising the staff, and I think that is really, really crazy. I don't know if you have a response. I don't know if you are aware, but I think that is a crisis situation that is happening in Tobago at this time.
Ms. Lewis, I understand that the responsibility to deal with some of this is really for the port, but perhaps you could share your perspective if you are aware in terms of how that is managed on your end, if you are aware.
Okay, to the Chair, thank you for those questions, and I will do my best. And so I will tackle firstly your first questions in terms of the uniform and equipment. That's a very good question. That has been something that the Estate Police Association has most recently rectified with the Port Authority in terms of the uniform, wear for the officers. And it comes back to procurement. Uniforms are supposed to be done yearly, but however, due to the red tape or the whole thing that goes with the procurement process, it has never been done on time. We had a matter at court with this same uniform, which has been resolved by this board. Thanks for that. And going forward, we hope that stays on par in terms of the uniform being issued yearly. Now, uniform also includes, the full kit, shoes, everything like that. We still have the issues with the shoes, and that is still being worked on. It also includes PPE, and that will include our safety vests, our helmets, and all these other stuff that comes along with it. So sometimes when you do see an officer probably not looking their sharpest on that particular day, probably they're waiting for uniform that the Port Authority has yet to provide, but we are working on that. And in terms of other equipment that may not be probably working, that was also one of our concerns when we submitted our submission, says in the lack of proper infrastructure and equipment, which will include all those that the officers need to perform on a regular basis. We also highlighted the infrastructure. There are some locations that, for example, if we see the Western Gate where containers are entering and exiting, that is full of dust. And especially in the season, we're in the dry season, and we rely on a truck to come and wet, but that makes no sense in itself. As the truck leaves, it gets back dry, and you have to do that, you're just wasting water. What should be done is something to put in place for long-term stability in terms of the paving and stuff. We had this discussion with safety. We've been having these discussions, and it still is as it is. And even location-wise, so all of these are things that are great concern to the Estate Police Association. Just recently, had an officer and had an incident with a gate that was very heavy that the shade could not have removed or opened, and it fell. And this is, from my knowledge, is not the first person or first time the gate has fallen. So these are things that are concern to us that we are bringing up, that we are seeking to have addressed. In terms of the incident on the boat. So when the officers, first of all, to be on the boat, they have to be certified, and most vessels ask for the certification. And then on the boat, they're under the command, I should say, of the captain, and they do drills on the boat. So the officers are very much aware of what is to transpire in case of a bomb scare, and how to handle that, and how to go based on the direction from the captain and based on the drills that are being done very regularly. So I hope these answer your question. And in terms of the safety officer, I'm not sure about that part. Right.
Just 1 second, member. The incident you reported with the gate, did that happen in Trinidad or Tobago?
I'm sorry, that was in Trinidad. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Alwari.
Thank you very much to the Estate Police Association. I note quite understandably and justifiably that there's a great degree of focus from the EPA's perspective, understandably, on state and condition of working arrangements, etc. But in terms of the full powers, privileges, and immunities that you enjoy under the Supplemental Police Act, because you're the police in the defined area, is there any kind of data that you can provide us, not necessarily today, but coming after today, as to interdictions, charges, prosecution? In other words, then, what your output from a policing perspective produces, more than presence on it. I do understand that customs would have a particular role in its customs law enforcement, but from a police perspective on that estate, could we be provided with some of your data on your charges, convictions, etc., so that we are aware of what may need to be improved or not improved? Who manages the cases? Do you attend at court? Who does the prosecution of the case? What I'd like to know is how we convert an interdiction into a conviction or an acquittal. So from that line of perspective, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. And at this stage, I would like to ask members. At this stage, I wish to ask members if there are any further questions.
Just one to run back to topic now that we're finished with the EPA. The Chamber of Commerce had in its written submission, under its responses to 18, what legislative or regulatory reforms would you recommend? There was an interesting line in bold, said review of Public Procurement Act for better alignment to the business environment. I couldn't figure out what that meant. Could you perhaps assist me with that?
Chair, through you, thank you, Member Alwari. Since the proclamation of the Act, it has been tested, and the business community found that the process, starting with the onboarding process for selection for procurement in the public domain, is not aligned with the ease of doing business. So maybe that is how I should have phrased it in the response. So starting from the onboarding process to the actual procurement process, it is not facilitative of the ease of doing business. So if you have to do business with any state entity through a procurement process, the legislation is counter the ease of doing business. And what we are requesting is, having tested the legislation, we now understand where the gaps are and what improvements can be made from the feedback provided by the business community, because at the end of the day, we are the entities that are being engaged to provide goods and services to the state, that we could upgrade the legislation to make it more facilitative to the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago.
And was that specifically in relation to the interaction with the port from that perspective, or just in general? In general.
So it was addressing one of the questions in terms of legislative requirement, because there is a procurement aspect to the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago as well when it engages the business community, but it was a general statement, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could then respectfully ask if the Chamber could provide some examples for elucidation as it relates to the port. I think it's a very worthwhile point. Across the table, I think.
I have one actually.
Yeah? Would you mind, Madam Chair?
I have a live example.
Yeah?
At this very moment, there are 2 floor cranes that move from the berth to stack, 2 that are down right now in Point Plebdeco. And when I inquired why, because I started getting a lot of calls from manufacturers, they have containers on the port, they can't get it off, and first thing I'm going to do is call Mr. Juman, but it's not Mr. Juman's fault. It is 2, so they have 5 floor movers, RTGs, what move around the containers. After it comes off, they ship to shore, and put it onto the ground. These RTGs move it to stack by the stackers. But now, so they normally have 5, 3 are down. And when I ask why, they say that, we had to go through OPR, and we have to be transparent. I guess what my colleague is saying in the back is that we don't have a problem with OPR and procurement regulation. It's just that it needs to be more flexible, because machine parts are urgent. Now, granted that there should be a preventive maintenance crew in place to have stock of these parts and so on, but you can't predict everything that's going to break down in a machine. So, you have to have exceptions or flexibility for emergency, because now what is happening is that is causing a whole repercussion of rent and damage, because you remember these cranes they have 2 cranes, working 24 hours, right? And these floor movers, they normally have 5, but they only have 2 working now, 3 down. So they're waiting on parts. And while they're waiting on parts, they have to wait on OPR to get, so it's a bit of a mess. It's a bureaucratic mess that could be fixed very easily. That's a typical example.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Parson. Wish to invite Member Thomas for a final question, because we are wrapping up now. So, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the benefit of the edification of all of us, maybe one of the associations can help us. Who exactly is responsible for the safety officers that preside over safety on the port?
Yeah, the safety officers, Madam Chair, through you, is part of our bargaining unit, and they report to someone in management, right? There's a designated person who they work under and who they report to. And as you may be aware, because we are a port, there are some international practices that we must follow. And I must say that, the safety officers are required to follow those best practices, and they do it on a regular and consistent basis. So I would really like to dig deeper into your question, because to ask who in charge of the safety officers have me a little baffled, you know, from
All right.
where I sit.
Through you, Madam Chair, because I identified earlier that there is no supervision of safety officers on the port in Tobago, and I think that is a critical matter. If you have a cadre of workers there, there must be a supervisor. That is my humble opinion.
Maybe you are misdirected, because I was in Tobago up to yesterday for the whole day, and there are officers that the safety officers report to, because you cannot have no port industry where you have workers and there is no one to report to. That is virtually impossible, with the greatest of respect.
Thank you, Mr. Anisette. And, I know that the discussion has been lively and helpful. Mr. Thomas, one last question.
Just to say to Mr. Anisette, I was in Tobago up to this morning. And I can identify and produce the facts. So I think it might be prudent to take a look into what is happening in Tobago.
Okay, thank you, Member. Now, at this stage, I wish to invite the representatives of our various stakeholders to give us brief closing remarks, and we will start with Mr. Juman. Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure on behalf of my colleague and myself and the division to be part of this most worthwhile discussion. We hope that we would have lent some level of enlightenment, and that what our contribution would also serve to improve the service and ultimately redound to the benefit of the ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. The Customs remain committed to support any efforts along these lines.
Thank you, Mr. Juman. Ms. Pierre-Chase?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to take up on the Comptroller Juman's statement on the ease of doing business, that is where I'm going to pivot my closing statements. It has been the ongoing call of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry and Commerce that we need to improve the ease of doing business in Trinidad. It costs, everything costs money. And I want to just tie in two statements made by Mr. Juman and Mr. Anisette. In Mr. Juman's contribution, he had said that the CED, the Customs and Excise Division, focus on border security and revenue collection. And I was to intimate to him that trade facilitation is a key component to that. And the aspect of trade facilitation in that conversation is the ease of doing business. And on Mr. Anisette's point with, if the resources available to the human resource capital, the efficiencies and the operationalization of the port will be at 100% capacity. And that too feeds into our call for the improvement in ease of doing business. I think one of the main points that came out from our conversation this afternoon is that sometimes we operate in silos, and you would have detected that sometimes we are unaware of what the other is doing, and if we are aware, it will better feed into how business operates more efficiently. And a key takeaway for us on our end of this table is that if we have better interactions, all stakeholder involvement, that we could all work together to improve the ease of doing business. And I thank you for the opportunity this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Pierre-Chase. Mr. Parson.
Yes, I am very, very delighted to be here and to contribute because, yes, I am very grateful to be here and to make a contribution. The port of Port of Spain is extremely important to manufacturers. As I expressed at the beginning, we are on a drive to increase our exports by $1 billion TT dollars per year. That's export for the next 5 years. And that's a huge task. especially because there are so many other things thrown at us, geopolitical moves, some minor taxes here and there, and, so with all of these obstacles and impediments, the port efficiency is really, really critical to us. We import and we export. Some companies in Trinidad right now import and export over 1,000 containers per month. I mean, just to put things in perspective, and just calling one company, and that's SM Jaleel. They are moving 1,000 containers and export a month. And just figure, if a little crane breakdown here, and what happens? Customers not getting the orders, they're angry, we not getting the forex. And so it's a whole. So I am really happy to be part of this discussion and see if we could contribute in any way. It is a very sore spot for us. It is the one thing that we don't have control over, and we have control inside the factory, but we don't have control what's coming in and what's going out, and it's important to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Parson. Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. We want to take the opportunity to see how grateful we are to be part of this this session where all the stakeholders are present. The estate police supports each and every stakeholder that is present at the Port Authority. We take what we do very seriously. We want to be modernized. The part we think it is extremely important, in fact, for the Port of Port of Spain to be modernized in keeping with what is best practice all over the world. What we want is better training and better equipment, and for the stakeholders, and most importantly for the government and for the Port Authority management to understand that we are not just a labor provider, that we are an integral part of protecting the critical assets of Trinidad and Tobago. And in doing that, there needs to be a focus on this particular department and not look at it as just another add-on, because the customs is there, and we have to support the customs, we have to support the manufacturers, we have to support each and every person who comes into the port, protect them. So when things leave the port, it is supposed to be signed off by the estate police. So we need to have that focus being placed on the estate police and the functions that we are created to carry out by law, as Mr. Arawi keeps it under 1502. We have all the powers, rights, and immunities of that of a police officer. So we are here, and we're thankful that a lot of information that was shared that we could take back in our interactions with the board and our interactions with the management, and in pursuance of getting to that ideal where we will actually be more productive and contribute to the Port Authority and Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We, the Custom Clerks and Custom Brokers Association of Trinidad, remain committed to constructive collaboration with the Port Authority and, by extension, all our stakeholders. We are guided by law, and being part of the chain of trade facilitation, we look forward to efficient, predictable, and modern port operations, which are essential to strengthen national trade performance, protecting business from unnecessary costs, and enhancing Trinidad and Tobago's economic competitiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Mr. Prasad.
Thank you, Chair. In closing, I'd like to say more than 80% of world trade is carried by sea, by volume. So imagine a small island developing state like us, the percentage of our trade carried by sea, and therefore the importance of the Port of Port of Spain in support of that trade. So we are very thankful to be part of this Joint Select Committee, to take part in it, and to work alongside our colleagues around the table here to achieve some degree of operational efficiency, well, a research and investigation into the operational efficiency of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, which will redound to the benefits of trade facilitation and ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Mr. Anisette.
Dear Madam Chair, thanks for the opportunity and your colleagues. And I also want to extend my appreciation to all the stakeholders who are present. And I want to make a point, if I'm allowed, Madam Chair, that the union have been making. We are not materializing and realizing and appreciating that where Trinidad and Tobago stands in the sealing and sea trade, we can, with the efforts collectively, make ourselves a transshipment hub, which will renown in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago. In terms of all the forex trade and forex that we're talking about, I think that is critical. But that can only come about when we stop dealing in silos and when we see Trinidad and Tobago first. And therefore, I am hoping that coming out of this, that something real, something tangible that Trinidad and Tobago can benefit from. And I trust with your guidance, Madam Chair, we will see that kind of potential materialize, the potential and capabilities that we have in Trinidad and Tobago. I also want to take the opportunity to tell my dock workers continue to work, because we work under all kinds of conditions. I know what it's like to be waiting for confirmation 34 casual clerks more than 7 years now. Right? And those are some of the issues that we have, which is human resource issues. And if we don't address that, all this talk here will not mean anything. Having said that, I want to reiterate the commitment of the SWWTU and by extension, its workers, to work with all the stakeholders to see the dream that we have in the SWWTU to make Trinidad and Tobago one of the better ports in the Caribbean region, and we have the potential. Just give us the environment, give us the tools, give us the equipment, give us the operational infrastructure, and we will do the work on the port. So thanks for this opportunity, and I really pray to the ancestors that something will come out of this meeting today. I have this feeling, and I want to thank you again, Chair, for the opportunity that has been given to the SWWTU to speak for and on behalf of our members, who we dearly love and who has the capacity and the ability to perform if given the tools to so do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anisette, and thank you to all of the stakeholders for your attendance and your participation, your invaluable contributions to the work that we're doing in this committee. It is greatly appreciated. I also wish to extend my gratitude to my fellow committee members for your support and participation in today's proceedings, and of course, to the staff of the Office of the Parliament for their procedural research and logistical support for today's proceedings. And thank you to the viewing and listening audience. This meeting is now adjourned.